What is up, guys? Bobgar here, and it is closing thoughts time for $10 10 ticket modern core equipment combo. We went 4-1, and I thought we did really well. The match we lost, our opponent had Stony Silence too early twice in a row, and we didn't draw our artifact or enchantment destruction, and that basically cost us the game. Game 2, I obviously in that match we should have sideboarded it in. I don't know what I was thinking. It was really dumb. But if you played smarter than me, you might have won that match. I lost that match mostly. I mean, game 3, I just didn't draw it. But game 2, I very well might have drawn it if I had put it in there. So that was a very winnable matchup. Although that is a strong deck, I now realize what deck it is, which is kind of this Oketra's Monument deck that's been making the rounds in Modern. I think this deck actually might have a favorable matchup against it, but it's certainly not a deck I'm embarrassed to lose to, even if it was on the back of the double Stony Silence draw. But 4-1 is very good. I'm happy with that. Let's talk about the winners and losers. Usually I do 3 checks and 3 X's, and I really couldn't bring myself to do that here. I only gave 2 X's and 2 checks for the ones that I thought were the most important and the ones that I thought were the least important. And the ones that I thought were most important are probably not really much of a surprise to anybody. Puresteel Paladin is absolutely the all-star of the deck. He is necessary in the deck, and he is great. Armament Master is also pretty important. I mean, he is most of the times we won, it wasn't off of Cranial Plating, it was off of Armament Master, and he's very good. I mean, sometimes we did just win off Kor Duelist, swinging in with a million buffs, but Armament Master was kind of the more common way to win, and he's the most important way to win. So that's what he gets to check there. And then the X's, Spidersilk Net is just our weakest 0-drop. I don't think I would remove it from the deck. I mean, I just think it's the best option that we have, but it's just not great. It doesn't feel very good. But it's a combo piece, so it is what it is. You can't expect all the 0-drop equipments to be good. And then Captain's Clause, especially in these 5 matches, I don't think I ever used it to good effect. It's quite possible that it should be replaced by one of the cards we're going to talk about in a second here. And so that's why I give it an X. I don't know if it's worth removing, but it's definitely, of the ones that we've talked about, I think it's one of the weaker ones. Alright, so those are the winners and losers. And now let's quickly look at the changes we might make. This is a pretty bare slide. There's not a ton of things to change. The big one is, I think it's correct to run at least some number of Mox Opals. I don't know if that number is 4, but certainly probably 2 or 3. We're gonna have enough artifacts to turn this on most of the time, and if we turn it on, it's quite good. So I think 2 or 3 Mox Opals makes a lot of sense. It's just free mana when we're trying to combo off. Unfortunately, a Mox Opal is like $50 a piece, both in paper and on Magic Online. That's like the price that it is. So it takes the deck from being a $10 deck online to being a, $150 or $200 deck online just from that one card. So it's kind of a little crazy. The other thing that we kind of skipped on was White has a lot of good sideboard cards like Rest in Peace and Leyline of Sanctity, and those are just relatively expensive, and we didn't have the budget to slip them in our build. But if we had a higher budget build, it very well make sense to run some of those kind of stronger white sideboard cards that we have access to but didn't have the money to afford. And then I got some suggestions for cards that partly solve the go wide problem, the problem where our opponents are going super wide. The first one, which I personally think is the most viable, is O Naginata. So O Naginata, it's hard to read here, but it's a equipment that costs 1 mana to play, 2 to equip, and it gives your creature +3/+0, I believe, and trample. And that's what we really need. Trample. It has one big disadvantage, which is you can't equip it to a creature with power 3 or less, but almost all of our creatures will have power 3 or greater if we run out a few of our other artifacts on top of them. So I felt like this is still pretty useful, and there were definitely some games, even in the matches we played, where we really wanted that trample. They were just able to chump block, especially our Kor Duelist, and keep us off lethal and things like that. So I think that one's worth running potentially over Captain's Clause, almost definitely over at least 1 Bonesplitter. So maybe as a 2 of is what I was thinking. I don't know if it makes sense to get on 2 Bonesplitters or get on 1 Bonesplitters, 1 Captain's Clause, but I think that's kind of the stuff that you would replace it with. You don't want to go too high on it because you still want those other plus power equipments in the deck to make sure that you can actually equip this to things, because it would suck to just get a whole bunch of Onaganatas and not being able to equip them to anything. But that's that. And then somebody suggested Dragon Throne of Tarkir, which is a super powerful equipment. But it requires you to have a bunch of creatures, and it's also a 4-drop, and it also costs 2 to activate. So what it does is you equip it to a creature. That creature then has Defender. They can't attack. And that creature has pay 2, tap other creatures you control, gain trample, and get +X, where X is their power. So it basically doubles the power of all your creatures and gives them all trample, which is a super big bonus. But like I said, I think they played a lot of multiplayer, and I think in multiplayer it makes a lot of sense. I think for one-on-one it's a little too slow, and there's a little bit too much removal in the meta to make this very good. And when I say removal, I mostly mean sometimes it's just hard to stick 2 or 3 threats. And unless you have 2 or 3 threats, I don't think it's worth it over some of the cheaper equipment that you can get out. And then finally, I wanted to mention Kemba Ka Regent, I think, as a possible sideboard card. I don't know if it's good enough, but I think it would be absolutely hilarious. So this is a 3-mana legendary cat cleric. It's a 2/4, and it has at the beginning of your upkeep, put a 2/2 white cat creature token onto the battlefield for each equipment attached to Kemba Ka Regent. So if we can move our equipments around freely, we don't really usually need them on anybody specific on defense. We can just pile them all on there, get back to our turn. We can probably just put out 10 creatures, you know, and that would be freaking awesome. It is a little bit Happy Christmas Land, but I think it could be cool. And I think, like I said, it's mostly a sideboard card. You want it in the matchups where spinning out a ton of creatures is useful. Either because they're managing to chump block a lot of your guys, or because they have a lot of removal themselves, and this helps you rebuild your board really easily. I will say in games like that, they very well might have removal for it before you can get any creatures out of it, but I still think it's pretty cool, pretty sweet at least. Oh, I also wanted to mention Sigarda's Aid. I haven't tested with it enough. I look at it, and it doesn't feel good enough to me to be in the deck. Sigarda's Aid is a 1-mana enchantment, not attached to anything, just a world enchantment kind of. It gives all of your auras and equipment flash, so you can play your equipments down at instant speed, which is nice in the deck. It means when you're swinging in, if they only have 1 blocker, they don't know which one to block, you can make combat really hard for your opponent. So that's one thing it does. And then, oh yeah, well, I forgot the other part. When they come into play, you can instantly equip them for free without paying their equip costs. So there's both the fact that you can do it as like use your things as a combat trick, either to help push through lethal or to win up trades against your opponent. And then it also has the advantage of acting like another Puresteel Paladin. I mean, so that sounds really good, but the problem is that it also takes away, I mean, I think the people I saw talking about it were talking about running it as like a 2 or 3 of, and if you take away 2 or 3 combo slots or 2 or 3 creature slots, those are, you know, also pretty important to the deck. So it's a pretty hard trade-off. I'd have to see how it plays and whether it's really worth it for me in the deck. And I haven't had time to test that. But I wanted to at least mention that one because a bunch of people mentioned it to me. And it's a card I love. I'm not 100% sold on it being good enough to make it in the deck, because this deck wants to be relatively fast and it needs to be relatively threat dense. I mean, well, it's not that threat dense, but it can't go down that many threats, and it also can't go down that many equipment if it wants to combo off. So it's in this hard state where it's like, it's hard to cut too many of either of those things. Slipping in Mox Opal is easy because you go down a couple of lanes for it. Slipping in Rest in Peace and Leyline of Sanctity are easy because they go in the sideboard. Slipping in Unaganada has some easy replacements for it. Those other, like Sigarda's Aid, I mean, maybe it's better than the third Srams. I'm just not sure. So warrants testing, but I wanted to mention it. And that's the deck for the week. I really loved this deck. It was partly inspired because I got a request I meant to call him out in the first video and I forgot to. Tom Slipknot 1. It had also been a deck that I had built to some extent a while ago, because my girlfriend also has a Core Tribal Equipment deck that we kind of built together and have been working to build up, and it never made it combo quite like this, but she had kind of a more fair deck with it, with Cranial Platings and things like that, and it was always really fun, not quite like tier competitive, but a really cool deck. So this is one that I was enthusiastic about doing, and honestly really happy with how it turned out. It was surprisingly competitive in the games I played, and even when it struggled to combo off, even when it was in those like grindy matchups against Control, it still held its own pretty well. I do think we got a little lucky to beat Blue-White Control there. I think that one should have been a loss. Obviously he got stuck on white mana, but he got lucky some of the earlier games too. So I mean, you never know. I certainly thought it put up a better fight than I would have expected. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Hey guys, Bobgar here. I just really wanted to quickly say, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you enjoy my content in general and would like to see more of it, subscribe. I'll be coming out with more content in the future. And please leave me comments and let me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, both in terms of production and in terms of my play and my deck building and all that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time.